The galaxy held its collective breath as High Counselor Vex Tamira of the Galactic Concord addressed the assembled representatives from over 3,000 species. Her crystalline exoskeleton glimmered under the chamber's light, tiny fractures, marking her advanced age. She had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations during her 7th-century tenure. The motion to establish a permanent quarantine of Sol system and all human colonial holdings has passed with unanimous consent, she announced, her translator rendering her harmonic speech patterns into the standard galactic pidgin. As of this cycle, humanity is officially classified as a Class 5 existential threat species. All previous treaties are nullified. The exclusion zone will extend 12 light-years in all directions from their furthest established settlement. Murmurs rippled through the enormous chamber. Admiral Oryx leaned forward, his 4 primary eyes narrowing. And if they breach the quarantine? Immediate sterilization protocols are authorized, Vex's Tamira responded without hesitation. We cannot risk further contamination. In the rearmost section of the chamber, observer Calix Morven, one of the few humans permitted to attend, slipped away from the proceedings, heart pounding. The Council's verdict was worse than anyone on Earth had anticipated. Not mere sanctions or reduced trade status, but complete isolation under threat of genocide. 14 days later, as the quarantine barrier generators were being deployed by the Concord fleet, Morven's encrypted transmission reached Earth's Unified Defense Command. Admiral Prisha Lakshev reviewed the data with her senior staff aboard the orbital command station Resilient. Her weathered face remained impassive, but the muscles in her jaw tensed visibly. They're actually going through with it, Commander Ryuji observed quietly. Complete quarantine. After everything we did for them during the Void War, Lieutenant, Noor added bitterly. 17 billion human lives lost defending their worlds from the swarm. Admiral Lakshev raised a hand for silence. The Concord has made their decision, but they've forgotten something critical about our species. Her dark eyes swept across the gathered officers. Humanity has never respected boundaries we didn't set ourselves. On the holographic display, the massive energy barrier began taking shape, a network of interlocking fields designed to prevent any ship or transmission from passing through. Earth and its 37 colony worlds would soon be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Begin Operation Firebreak, Lakshev ordered. And contact the Forge. Tell Director Elspeth to activate the Prometheus Protocol. Deep beneath the Olympus Mons research facility on Mars, Dr. Elspeth Rousseau received the transmission. She stood before a sealed vault door marked with radiation warnings and biohazard symbols in a dozen languages. Her authorization unlocked the first set of safeguards, revealing technology that had been hidden from their alien allies for decades. The fruits of reverse engineering recovered artifacts from a civilization far older than the Concord itself. They think they're containing us, she whispered to her assistant, Dr. Zotkin. They don't realize they're trapping themselves in here with us. As the quarantine barrier sealed Earth off from the stars, humanity prepared not for isolation, but for the greatest act of defiance in their tumultuous history. The ban made perfect sense to the Galactic Concord. Unfortunately for them, humans had never been particularly sensible. 5 months into the quarantine, the Concord monitoring station orbiting just beyond the energy barrier detected no attempts at breakthrough. Their sensors showed human vessels maintaining orbit within their permitted zones, apparently accepting their cosmic prison sentence with unexpected docility. The humans appear to be complying with the containment protocols, reported observer Creel to the Concord Security Council. Perhaps they finally recognized their precarious position. High Marshal Uthrax chittered skeptically, mandibles clicking. That would be unprecedented. Their historical records show not a single instance of accepting confinement without resistance. Perhaps. They've grown wiser, suggested Counselor Faison, the delegate from the ancient Mura collective. Uthrax's compound eyes fixed on the holographic display of the quarantine zone. Or perhaps they're planning something catastrophically human. The Marshal's suspicions were warranted. Beneath the surface of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, the cavernous manufacturing facility known as the Forge had shifted to continuous production. Thousands of workers operated in rotating shifts, the massive assembly lines never pausing. Forge director Elspeth Rousseau studied the latest prototype with satisfaction. The device, no larger than her palm, represented the culmination of decades of clandestine research. The phase shift inducer is operating at 94% efficiency, reported Chief Engineer Vasquez. The tests confirm it can create a stable passage through the barrier's energy matrix without detection. And the observers on the other side? Elspeth asked. The quantum field generator creates a temporal bubble lasting approximately 40 seconds. To external observers, nothing appears to happen, but our ships can pass through during that window. Elsewhere in the solar system, the transformation was even more dramatic. The shipyards of Titan, once producing civilian vessels and small military escorts, had been converted to manufacture a new class of vessel. Admiral Lakshev inspected the first completed prototype, the Pathfinder-class stealth corvette. She doesn't look like much, noted Captain Isamu. That's precisely the point, Lakshev replied. The metamaterial hull absorbs 99.8% of all scan frequencies used by Concorde vessels. The drive system leaves no conventional wake signature. For all practical purposes, she's a ghost. On Mars, deep within the Valles Marineris canyons, the most ambitious project was underway. The Prometheus Protocol had authorized the activation of technology recovered from the ruins on Charon 70 years earlier, technology predating the Concorde by millennia. Dr. Zotkin monitored the power readings as the ancient device hummed to life, its crystalline components pulsing with internal light. It's stable. The wormhole generator is functioning exactly as the translations predicted. Location? Asked Colonel Rivera, the military liaison. The aperture will form in the Kuiper Belt, well beyond the barrier. The exit point is approximately 9 light-years. From here, near the abandoned mining outpost at Proxima Centauri. While the Concorde believed humanity contained and controlled, Homo sapiens was preparing for their greatest exodus. The barrier wasn't keeping humans in. It was merely providing cover for their most audacious plan yet. We're not trapped here forever, Elspeth announced to the assembled team. We're just gathering our strength. Archives of the Galactic Concorde, Historical Section 7994B, First Contact Report, Human Species, Restricted Access, Security Clearance Omega required. In retrospect, the warning signs were evident from our first encounter with humans, Senior Arwa. Xenoanthropologist G. Laurent had written in his classified assessment. Their physiological traits alone should have warranted caution. Species with endurance predator characteristics rarely develop technological civilization because the traits required for patient stalking are neurologically opposed to those needed for scientific advancement. Humans are the exception. They combined relentless pursuit with tool development. The report had been filed, flagged, and subsequently ignored. The quarantine had now been in effect for 11 months. The Concorde monitoring stations observed nothing unusual within the Sol system. Human communications continued normally, though only within their isolation zone. Occasional protests were registered through official channels, but no violations had been attempted. The first indication that something was wrong came from a remote trading outpost in the Cygnus Reach, over 80 light-years from Earth Station. Administrator Vrel reviewed the security footage with increasing alarm. The merchant who had arrived 3 days earlier, identifying as a Perdaxian trader, had managed to access restricted communication arrays before disappearing. The being's features had seemed slightly off, but not enough to trigger biometric alarms. Replay the footage when they accessed the central terminal, Vrel instructed the security AI. The recording showed the supposed Perdaxian working at the console. As they reached up to adjust something, their sleeve pulled back, revealing a patch of skin that lacked the characteristic blue mottling of Perdaxian physiology. Freeze image. Enhance Sector 4B, Vrel ordered. The enhanced image revealed skin with a distinctive pinkish tone. Impossible, Vrel whispered. No human ships have breached the quarantine barrier. Our monitoring is absolute. But similar reports began trickling in from across the galactic arm. Unusual visitors, small discrepancies in identification records, missing technology. Always subtle, always careful, but forming a pattern that became impossible to ignore. High Counselor Vex Tamira convened an emergency session of the Security Council. "How are they getting out?" demanded Representative Zorak of the Unified Hives. Admiral Orex's report was disturbing. "We found no evidence of barrier breaches. All human vessels remain accounted for within the quarantine zone. Yet we have confirmed sightings of human operatives on at least 6 worlds. They must have had agents outside the barrier before the quarantine was established," suggested Counselor Faison. "Impossible," countered Admiral Orex. "The timing doesn't work. Some of these humans appear to have arrived recently, and they possess current information. On Nivalis III, a frozen mining world at the edge of Concord space, Commander Tarek of Concord Security cornered one such operative, a human who had been posing as a Silurian engineer for weeks. "How did you get here?" Tarek demanded after the successful capture. "How did you breach the barrier?" The human woman, who called herself Lyra, merely smiled. "You're asking the wrong question, Commander. The right question is, how many of us are already out here? And what are we doing?" Back in Sol System, Admiral Lakshev reviewed the progress reports from Operation Firebreak. The Pathfinder fleet now numbered 73 vessels, all equipped with phase shift technology. The ancient wormhole generator on Mars maintained 5 stable transit points beyond Conquer detection range. "They still think the barrier is working," she noted with grim satisfaction. "By the time they realize what's happening, we'll have established ourselves too firmly to be contained again." Humanity wasn't just escaping, they were infiltrating, gathering intelligence, and preparing for what would come next. 2 years into the quarantine, the Galactic Concord faced a crisis they couldn't explain. Critical systems throughout Concord. Space began experiencing cascading failures. Navigation beacons transmitted incorrect coordinates. Automated defense platforms went offline during routine maintenance. Supply chains for essential materials became mysteriously disrupted. None of these incidents could be directly traced back to human interference, yet the pattern was unmistakable to those who had studied Earth's historical tactics. "It's death, by 1,000 cuts," Admiral Orex explained to the increasingly anxious council. "Small disruptions, individually insignificant, collectively devastating. Meanwhile, beyond Concord detection, human settlements were taking root on worlds thought uninhabitable or worthless. Harsh planets the Galactic Concord had surveyed and dismissed centuries ago. On Ragnar, a high-gravity world with toxic atmospheric components, the underground colony had grown to 17,000 people. Colony Director Farron addressed the newest arrivals in the central cavern. "The Concord wrote off this world because they couldn't breathe the air," she told them. "Their loss, our gain. The heavy metals in the mountains provide everything we need for advanced manufacturing, and the radiation storms above give us perfect cover from orbital scans." Similar colonies had been established on 12 worlds, each exploiting environmental niches that other species found impossible or impractical. Humans, with their remarkable adaptability and technological augmentation, thrived precisely where others couldn't survive. In conquered space, rumors began to spread. Spacers whispered about ghost ships appearing and vanishing near the quarantine zone. Merchants reported encounters with beings who seemed almost, but not quite, like known species, as if someone were wearing a convincing but imperfect disguise. The paranoia these rumors generated became as disruptive as any direct attack. Trade slowed. Diplomatic relations between member species grew strained as accusations of human collaboration emerged. Counselor Vexa Tamira confronted Admiral Oryx in a private chamber after yet another inconclusive security briefing. "The quarantine is failing," she stated bluntly, "not because the technology is flawed, but because we fundamentally misjudged human psychology. We thought isolation would contain them, perhaps even cause their civilization to collapse inward." Oryx's outer membrane pulsed in acknowledgement. "Instead, we gave them something to unite against. We made ourselves the common enemy." "Worse," Vexa Tamira continued, "we underestimated their technological capabilities. The monitoring data suggests they're using principles outside our scientific paradigm. What neither of them knew was how right they were. The technology recovered from Karen, belonging to a civilization that had vanished long before the Concord evolved, operated on principles that Concord science classified as theoretically impossible. On the colony world Hyperion, Dr. Zotkin supervised the construction of the largest wormhole generator yet, designed to create a stable passage large enough for capital ships. "The Karen civilization left us more than technology," he explained to the assembled engineers. "They left us mathematical proofs that the Concord's understanding of dimensional physics is fundamentally flawed. They refuse to see what's possible because it contradicts their established theories." As the generator powered up for its first test, creating a shimmering portal 30 meters in diameter, he added, "That blindness is our greatest advantage." In Sol system, the human fleet continued to grow, hidden from Concord's sensors by increasingly sophisticated countermeasures. Each ship that slipped through the barrier carried not just personnel and supplies, but Earth's most valuable export, innovation born of necessity and defiance. The quarantine had been meant to contain a dangerous species. Instead, it had created the perfect conditions for that species to evolve into something even more formidable. 4 years, announced High Marshal Uthrax to the Emergency Council. 4 years of quarantine, and the human problem has only grown worse. The evidence was undeniable. What had begun as isolated incidents had evolved into a pattern too consistent to ignore. Human agents operated throughout conquered space, using disguises and forged identities with disturbing effectiveness. More troubling were the reports of non-human species actively collaborating with these infiltrators. "The Rasalian Merchant Guild has been smuggling human technology," Admiral Oryx reported grimly. "The Volocris Confederation is providing sanctuary to known human operatives. 3 of our own monitoring stations have been compromised by staff sympathetic to the human cause." "How?" demanded Counselor Fizan. "How have they inspired such loyalty from species who should know better?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Junior analyst Mila, a relatively young member of the Tenzari species, had been studying communication patterns across supposedly secure channels. "They're offering something we don't," she explained, visibly nervous, addressing the council directly. "The humans approach other species as individuals, not representatives of a collective. They forge personal connections, make specific promises tailored to individual needs rather than species-wide policy." "Bribes," snorted Representative Jorak. "No," Mila countered cautiously. "Investment. They identify talented individuals who feel constrained by conquered protocols and offer them freedom to pursue their ideas. The humans call it venture partnership, and it's creating a shadow economy throughout our territory." Beyond the quarantine zone, this network had grown more extensive than even the Concord feared. On Cardalian Station, nominally under Mura collective control, an entire section had been converted into what humans called an innovation hub. Ileana Ryvek, once a mid-level engineer in the Concord Science Division and now a human collaborator, demonstrated her latest creation to an audience of 12 different species. The conventional Concord power distribution grid loses nearly 40% efficiency through regulation safeguards, she explained, activating her prototype. This redesign maintains all safety parameters but recovers 34% of that lost energy. A Volocris merchant clicked his beak appreciatively. The Concorde rejected this design? 3 times, Ileana confirmed. It doesn't follow their standardized approach to power management. They prioritize uniformity over efficiency. This scene repeated across hundreds of locations, collaboration centers where humans openly shared technological innovations, cultural exchange, and most importantly, a different philosophical approach to galactic civilization. Meanwhile, human military capability continued its dramatic expansion. The once hidden colonies had grown into fortified outposts, each specializing in different aspects of what Admiral Lakshev called asymmetric deterrence. On Hyperion, the first Prometheus-class carrier emerged from its construction facility, a vessel larger than anything humanity had built before the quarantine. Unlike Concorde designs, which emphasized standardized modules and interchangeable components, human ships had evolved toward specialized, adaptive configurations. The Concorde builds fleets for uniformity and overwhelming force, explained Fleet Commander Niende during the commissioning ceremony. We build for unpredictability and tactical flexibility. The carrier housed a revolutionary propulsion system derived from the ancient Karen technology, drives that bent space-time in ways Concorde science considered impossible, allowing for maneuvers that would shear conventional vessels apart. The Concorde gradually became aware of these developments. Panic began to spread among the leadership. What had been intended as a straightforward containment of a problematic species had instead created the conditions for that species to evolve beyond control. We should have exterminated them when we had the chance, whispered Representative Zorak in a closed session. Vex Tamira's exoskeleton dimmed with concern. And perhaps that thinking is precisely why they've grown so determined to overcome us. 6 years, 2 months, and 11 days after the quarantine was established, the illusion of control shattered completely. It began with a simple message, transmitted simultaneously to every communication hub in conquered space, bypassing security protocols as if they didn't exist. The message contained nothing but coordinates, and a timed debate raged within the conquered leadership. Was it a trap? An invitation? A threat? In the end, curiosity and fear compelled them to investigate. A delegation of 17 ships, representing the major powers of the Galactic Concorde, arrived at the specified location, a seemingly empty region of space near the remains of a long-dead star. Scanning reveals nothing unusual, reported the sensor officer aboard the Concorde flagship Unwavering Doctrine. Precisely at the designated time, space itself seemed to fold. Where emptiness had existed moments before, a massive installation appeared, a space station of unprecedented scale. Its architecture unlike anything in Conquered records. That's impossible, whispered Admiral Orex. No cloaking technology could hide something of that magnitude. Not cloaking, corrected the science officer. According to these readings, it simply wasn't here until now. A transmission emanated from the station. Admiral Lakshev's face appeared on the Concorde view screens. Representatives of the Galactic Concorde, welcome to Nexus Prime, she began without preamble. What you are witnessing is a demonstration of phase shift technology, the ability to move objects partially outside normal space-time. This station has been here for 3 years. You simply couldn't perceive it. The implications were staggering. If humans could hide something this massive, what else remained unseen? Lakshev continued. We've invited you here to propose an end to this unnecessary conflict. The quarantine has failed. Humans are established on 37 worlds beyond Sol System, with a combined population exceeding 300 million. We have developed technologies you classified as theoretically impossible, and we formed alliances with numerous species who recognize the benefits of collaboration over isolation. The station's exterior changed. sections becoming transparent to reveal shipyards, research facilities, and most alarmingly, a fleet of vessels unlike any the Concord had encountered, the products of human ingenuity unrestricted by Concord doctrine. You feared us because we are different, Lakshev stated, because we challenge your assumptions, because we adapt at a rate you find disturbing. These are the very qualities that make humanity valuable as allies rather than enemies, High Counselor. Vex Tamira found her voice. You violated the quarantine. You've infiltrated conquered space. You've subverted member species. We rejected arbitrary constraints, Lakshev countered. We explored beyond artificial boundaries, and we offered partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than mandated conformity. The question before you isn't whether humans can be contained. That question has been answered definitively. The question is whether the conquered is capable of evolving beyond its fear. As if to emphasize this point, additional phase shifts occurred throughout the region, revealing more installations, more ships, more evidence of human expansion. We could have revealed ourselves with weapons charged, Lakshev noted. Instead, we offer an open hand. The quarantine ends today, one way or another. We would prefer it ends with the beginning of a new relationship rather than conflict. In the stunned silence that followed, Vexa Tamira recognized the truth that had eluded the Concord for years. The ban had made perfect sense, but only within the limited framework of conquered understanding. By attempting to confine humanity, they had inadvertently created the perfect conditions for human exceptionalism to flourish. Perhaps, she said carefully, it is time for the Concord to reconsider its definition of galactic order. Behind her, the assembled representatives watched as another phase shift revealed yet another impossible human achievement. A stable wormhole, aperture forming, connecting this region directly to Earth itself. The quarantine barrier, still technically functional, had become utterly meaningless. Humans had not just escaped their cage, they had rendered the concept of containment obsolete. In the centuries that followed, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the collaborative era. The ban had made sense, they would acknowledge. But humanity had never been particularly good at respecting barriers, especially those imposed by others. It wasn't that humans were too much for the galaxy. It was that the galaxy had been unprepared for what humans could become when challenged, to overcome their limitations. The Concord had tried to contain a problem. Instead, they had catalyzed a revolution, one that would ultimately transform galactic civilization itself.